Back here on the show now to continue on from our last segment, talking about who was going to make the playoffs in the AFC conference for this year. Now we're going to talk about the other conference, the NFC, which 7 teams are going to make it this year out of a very competitive and I think a very top-heavy conference, more so than the AFC. So, looking at the teams that I have making the playoffs for this conference, I think one, it was very hard to do, just predicting it, but I feel confident that these 7 teams will make it. There are some surprises in there. We're going to get into all of them. Starting off with number 1, I think the Eagles will have enough this year, more so on the fact that I feel like the Niners will struggle some more this year, but I will touch on that more in just a second. But sticking to the Eagles, I think their roster and just how last year ended for them, very bad note. Jalen Hurts didn't play great as much as it was the play calling and everything like that. He didn't have his best season. The coordinators, at the heart of pretty much all the criticism with what went on with Brian Johnson, Sean Desai, Matt Patricia, all these guys, Nick Sirianni thrown in there as well. It was just a mess. Now, with 2 new coordinators, Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio coming in with that experience, I think that by default will help tremendously. Nick Sirianni taking more of a backseat approach now, I think is one very big of him to do, knowing that this season is big for the Philadelphia Eagles, not just because they are still considered one of the best teams, but now after having some inconsistency, right, you make the Super Bowl, then the next year you sort of fall off towards the end. You can't have that sort of fluctuation, especially when you add guys like Devin White, Saquon Barkley, obviously Jahan Dotson's in there now. The offensive line is still very good. They have all the pieces, a very talented roster to compete with any of these teams. So, also they have a very favorable schedule. I thought I wrote it down. I think there's something like, I think they have like the 21st hardest schedule in the NFL, easiest schedule of all these teams that I think will be competing for this number 1 seed. So all of that sort of plays in their favor. It does play in their favor fully, and I think the Eagles will jump up to that number 1 spot. Then at number 2, just falling off a little bit, not too much, the San Francisco 49ers winning their division, the NFC West, no doubt about that, but I feel like the Rams are going to be right there with them. I think they're really going to push them, and not only that, maybe sneakily you can have a close game there with the Cardinals with how much everyone's hyping them up, but I think the 49ers are still obviously the better team. The Seahawks are there as well. How are they going to operate with their new head coach, Mike McDaniel? That division got a little bit better. Clearly still the 49ers are the best team, but I feel like this year there's going to be a bit more of a struggle, a bit more of a threat from those teams, and the pressure that they're going to feel this year, right? Everything is going to be micro-analyzed for them. Looking at Brock Purdy, just right on the verge of becoming extension eligible. How does Brandon Ayuk look now after the big mess that he made trying to get his extension? How does he look? I don't really have too many doubts about him, but that's something else that people could point out. No questions about Trent Williams, but the defense as well, looking at some guys still not back. You look at Talanoa Hufanga. How healthy will he be at the start of the year? Drake Greenlaw won't be there to start the year as well. I feel like this year, with the pressure mounted on them, everybody's, saying that they have to do it this year with the threat of potentially losing one of these core players with Brock Purdy's extension coming up. I think that pressure could cause some lapses that we didn't see last year, so I have them falling off a little bit, but the number 2 seed is still very good, obviously. Then at number 3, I had my surprise team, but the more and more people talk about them, I think more they start believing that the Packers are right up there with some of the best teams in the NFC. And this one was a hard decision to make because I did pick the Packers to finish first in this division, so I had to put them here at number 3. And it is a big call, obviously, with how good the Lions are at that number 5 spot, as you see, but I will get to them later. But the Packers, to make this big of a jump just in just continuation from last year, in the playoffs, looking as good as they did, to jump up to this number 3 spot, I think would be a great accomplishment just in the matter of Jordan Love's first year as the starter to now in his second year as the full starter, taking over and becoming a top 3 team in that conference. I'm still confident in them, though, with that being a potential question. I'd like this Packers team, there's definitely going to be a ton of competition from this division alone. You look at all those teams I think could make a run at the playoffs. The Vikings got a little bit unlucky, right, with J.J. McCarthy being hurt. Not to discredit Sam Darnold, but, you kind of know what you're going to get out of him. To see a massive, massive change from him, I'll be just as surprised as anybody, but their division is a big reason why I potentially didn't have them higher, just because the Bears, the Lions, obviously, as you guys see, they're going to be great, in my opinion. So the Packers at still number 3. Their offense just getting more experienced from the playoff run they went on last year. Jordan Love is still my pick for MVP, so bringing the Packers to the number 3 seed in the playoffs, I think, would just only help that out. And it's an exciting team, exciting offense, adding Josh Jacobs, and their defense also very underrated with the pass rush, the defensive line that they have as well. So the Packers will be a top 3 team this year, in my opinion, in the NFC, that is. Then at number 4, we have the Atlanta Falcons. I think everyone's pick for this division, for this spot. I feel like they will still struggle, right, making this transition now into a full-fledged playoff team. There's still going to be some bumps in the road trying to get everything under wraps with a new quarterback, new coordinator, new head coach, and everything. But still, they're super talented. They're very talented enough to at least compete with Tampa Bay for this division. They're going to be the number fourth seed because I think this division is the weakest one out of all of them. In contention with the NFC East, but the Eagles are going to run away with it. So the Falcons are going to be here. They're going to have a top 4 team in the NFC. And I'll be interested to see how Kirk, once they get to the playoffs, how he navigates, being back in the playoffs, right? Because he doesn't have a great playoff record per se. He is a great quarterback. In the regular season, he puts up numbers. You don't want to compare him to Dak or anything like that, but in the playoffs, not as glowing as he does show out in the regular season, but that's still a long ways away. It could change this year with a better team around him, so we'll see. But I think just sticking to this seed specifically, the Falcons definitely do have enough to win this division. They're my pick, and they have the easiest schedule in the entire NFL, so it is just right there for them for the taking. It's going to be a massive disappointment if they don't win it, in my opinion. So I have them at the number 4 spot. Then at number 5, a surprise, I think, for a lot of people because the Lions are a great team. The Lions are a fantastic team. You saw it in the NFC Championship game last year. They have enough to get there, but I already picked the Packers to win this division. It doesn't make sense now to have the Lions as a top 3 team. I have to stick with my pick, so the Lions, unfortunately, are not going to have home field advantage in the playoffs. They're going to be the best team that didn't win their division this year in the NFC, and even still, when you have that good of a team, I don't think it necessarily matters too much, per se. You look at the Lions last year, they were steamrolling the 49ers in San Francisco. They had home field advantage, throughout the rest of it, and that definitely helped out against, you could say, the Rams, you could say the Bucks for a certain extent, but overall, I think building off of their performance from last year, now getting Amon-Ra St. Brown, my pick for the Offensive Player of the Year, full-fledged again, trying to push himself even more into that conversation of the best receivers. I think they have enough definitely to run the table, if you want to call it that, and beat anybody of the top 4 teams. Honestly, this conference overall is that close, but I picked the Packers to win the division. The Lions are a great team. I think they have enough, obviously, to be there. They upgraded on defense, especially, adding secondary pieces that they didn't have last year. The big worry for me is the pass rush for them, someone opposite of I'm forgetting his name now. Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson, someone opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, is a concern for me, but everywhere else you look, they have a great player at each position. The offensive line is insane for them, probably the best one in the NFL. So they unfortunately are going to be the fifth seed, though, in my predictions. Then to round it off here, the Los Angeles Rams. I have them still in the playoffs because their offense is going to be very good this year. Adding Blake Corum, hopefully having Cooper Kupp healthy for the majority of the year. Matthew Stafford continues to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, even if nobody puts him up there. Sean McVay, a candidate for the Coach of the Year this year. I truly believe that. And also, their defense, it did get better, adding guys like Darius Williams, Tre'Davious White, I want to say Cameron Curl, if I'm not mistaken, as well at the safety spot. And through the draft, I really liked them drafting Jared Verse and also his Florida State teammate as well. And they have young players already there that were very good. You look at Kobe Turner, Byron Young at the linebacker spot. But the challenge is being that young, right? Making that jump that you want to see from last year to this year. That's one of my concerns, and also the injuries could haunt this team. If Cooper Kupp or Matthew Stafford get hurt, that could really hurt their chances, so I couldn't put them that much higher. They're going to compete with the 49ers, but I just worry about those injuries a little bit here, more so than with the 49ers, obviously. And then the last team, maybe one of the biggest surprises, I think, for me, but I've been convinced. I've talked the Bears up a lot this offseason, and they're in an extremely difficult division, obviously, but, why not? Why can't it be the Bears? They have almost everything in place that you would like to have in a playoff team, right? You have Keenan, Rome, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift on a playoff team last year. Their defense, very, very underrated. They have a lot of good players on that defense. One of the best defenses in the league towards the second half of the year. It's just about getting everything in order pretty much this year. They have the third easiest schedule in the NFL as well. And Caleb Williams, if you guys didn't know, is a very good quarterback already. I think you can see it just the way that he plays, the way that he carries himself, the way that this team already is rallying around him, following him as a leader already. It's just a matter of time for them to get everything in order, and I think with the schedule in their favor, good players on this roster as well, credit to Ryan Poles and all their staff, they're going to have enough competing with other teams like the Bucks or the Saints or maybe even the Seahawks being in there as well. I think they could go toe-to-toe with a lot of those teams just trying to make that last playoff spot. So we're going to throw a surprise in there. The Chicago Bears will make it in the playoffs this year in the NFC. 3 teams from the NFC North will make the playoffs. Very confident in that division. The northern divisions in the NFL overall, probably the 2 best. The AFC South is up there, though, I will say, but the NFC North and the AFC North, very, very competitive this year. There are going to be a lot of good games in those divisions this year, in my opinion. But speaking of divisions and some of the best, some of the worst, we're going to talk about, lastly now, the series finale of my predictions for the final division in the NFL. We're going to talk about the AFC West, who I have finishing 4-1, and why I have them in each of those spots. So that is coming up right after this break. Don't go anywhere.